Thank you all for joining our first Lex Advanced workshop. I think we've got some pretty good interest in this idea that we're trying out here. So if although you don't have to necessarily be doing the Lex Advanced parts to be here in the workshop today. Just to make sure everybody's clear, though, what we are doing is this semester we're offering a series, I think 6 workshops that we're calling Lex Advanced, each dealing with some aspect of using kind of a more complex aspect of Brightspace for pedagogical purposes. And then we'll offer some more in the spring as well. These are all things that we often kind of talked about over the summer with people and said, well, you know, that's more advanced. We'll get to that later on. And so we knew there was some interest in some of these things, but we also didn't want to, we knew a lot of people weren't ready for the advanced stuff this summer. And we didn't want to overwhelm them any more than we were overwhelming them with some things. So we are excited to have you all here and showing your interest. But what we're doing is that we're saying, if you participate in, and Elizabeth or Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, four of the workshops we offer this year from Lex Advanced.
This semester.
This
Four
semester.
that we offer this semester. We're offering 6 this semester, and so if you participate in 4.
Then we will have a Lex Advanced certificate that will provide you with, that you can all put in Interfolio next year. But more importantly, you will be the superstars of Brightspace, because you will be familiar with some of the more complex pieces of it. And I think ultimately some of the most useful. These are more complicated, some of the things we'll be taking a look at. But once you learn how to do them, they really can save you a lot of time and a lot of effort as well. So that's obviously, and they can be more beneficial to the students also. All right, well, I've got 12:02, so I think we'll go ahead and get things started. Yes, Sierra, we will be, actually, you will all be, for if you attend these sessions fully, each session fully, you'll get a badge in Brightspace in the Learn Everywhere course, because you're all still enrolled in that Learn Everywhere course. And then we'll be able to keep track, and once you get 4 of those badges, we'll award you with the certificate.
And Jay, do you mind if I add something here, just because Sierra is new? We don't, though, Sierra, keep up with other workshop attendance. So one thing that we often get from new faculty, the end of their first year, is, can you give me a list of everything you attended? And there's no way we could do that and still get any of our work done. So be sure you're keeping up with everything you attended. But this we are keeping up with because you will receive another certificate at the end. So these we are, but for the others, we don't. Just want to give you the heads up on that, Sierra. And welcome again.
All right, I don't think I've ever been on a Zoom meeting with Steve where he didn't have a tropical background. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
You have to hide a lot more things at home, but in the office, you can see whatever you want to see.
Gotcha. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get things started. I hope folks were able to, if they needed to, watch that short video that I posted and emailed you about the other day. Really, the idea behind these is we don't want to spend time going into the basics of something, in this case, like rubrics. We want to kind of really spend time focusing on how rubrics can be used for our students, right now in the circumstances that we're all in. Right? And so, that video was just there to give you some terminology and a basic understanding of what rubrics are. Our plan for today is we've got 3 of us kind of running this workshop, and I guess I should say this is Carrie's inaugural CAT workshop as the faculty in residence, as our newest faculty in residence. So welcome to Carrie. Welcome to you all for being here for that.
So don't judge me if I'm terrible, please.
But I think you are all, if you didn't know Carrie before this summer, I think you folks got to know him pretty well over the summer. So I'm going to talk, I'm going to present here just a little bit what's some different rubrics can look like in Brightspace, just some of the rubrics I'm using for some of my classes, to give you a sense of the simplicity of some of them, the more complexity of some of them, but really so you can see just kind of how it looks in Brightspace as opposed to how it might look on an assignment sheet or on a notepad or wherever you kind of might keep rubrics if you're using them on your own. Carrie is then going to show you a little bit about how grading with using rubrics to actually grade in Brightspace looks, right? And then Janice will kind of step you through the process of how to actually create a rubric in Brightspace, and you'll be able to kind of get a sense of, well, you know, how do we do that thing, or how do we do this thing? And then we're hoping that we'll still have some time at the end where you all can do a little bit of work on a rubric in Brightspace. The nice thing about rubrics in Brightspace is you can work on them in any class, and it's not going to have any, it's not like some of the other stuff like quizzes where the students are going to suddenly see a quiz that they didn't see before. The rubrics are more in the background until you put them forward, so you can work on any class, or if you've got a sandbox, you can do it in there as well. Any questions before we go ahead and get things started? And I'm assuming is Elizabeth, are you serving as the voice of the chat? Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to serve as the voice of the chat. So if you all got questions or comments as we go along, it's helpful if you keep yourself muted while we're presenting for feedback. But if you've got questions or comments as you go along, put them in the chat and I will interrupt Jay. And we've got a small enough group that if you want to unmute, I'm sure he wouldn't mind. But you're welcome to put them in the chat and I'll try to catch him there.
Okay, and so this is on my iPad, but you know, obviously, I think as most of us have learned by now, you know, Brightspace. One of the great benefits of Brightspace is how adaptive it is to whatever platform you're taking a look at it on. But like I said, I just wanted to show you what these rubrics in Brightspace would actually look like, right? Because they look obviously a little bit different than they might on you know, paper. And I'm just going to give you kind of a couple of examples of how complex or how simple they can be as well. But I was going to show you a couple of them from, and if you're not familiar, I will kind of say this, you know, you can build rubrics while you're actually creating an assignment. You know, you can do it kind of on the cuff there, but you can also create them, and I find it's better to create them ahead of time as part of that backwards design process that we've really been encouraging you to think about. And so really the best place to do that is if you haven't done them before, is to come to course administration for your class. And then there's a special rubrics section, right? And then you'll see all of the rubrics that exist and are available in that class, if any. You can see this is from my X-Core class, and so I've moved this around now for 3 years, I think, between courses and master course shells. And so I'm carrying a lot of extra rubrics in here. But anyway, and then you can come to this and you can edit them from here. You can also do a preview of a rubric, right? And so this is a very simple kind of, you know, one criterion rubric that I use for what I call class engagement, right? And some of you have heard me talk kind of about how I am doing class engagement these days with the students actually self-assessing with this. But this is the rubric, you know, they use to assess themselves, and this is the rubric I would use to assess them when I used to do this, right? But it's just one criterion, and then in this case I've got the 4 levels, right? And I just do this as kind of a check plus, check plus, check minus kind of thing, right? So if I were doing it on paper, I would just do that, but this provides them with the details of this.
And before you move, Jay, one thing I want to point out on this, because as I've gotten to use rubrics more deeply in Brightspace, notice that he doesn't have a full 5-point scale there. And when I first started using them, I was trying to plug in or force, you know, a full scale. But you can really make these rubrics match the weight that you want different things to be.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Or, and again, you can go the holistic route, right, and not necessarily even assign points to something. Right now, we're going to be focusing on the analytical rubrics or analytic rubrics in Brightspace for today. If you want more information about holistic, we can talk about that afterwards or some other time as well. But those are two options you have in here. Right? But it's pretty straightforward, right? With that. Let me pull up a slightly more complex one. So this is what I used then to assess their learning reflections that they do in my class. Right? And this starts to get a little more complex for two reasons. I've got multiple criteria that I'm assessing them on. And then I've also got different point distributions for some of those criteria, right? And we'll be able to show you how that works, right? But the two most important things that I'm looking for in a reflection, as you can see here, are how engaged they are in the assignments, right? And the quality of writing that they're demonstrating in the assignment. And again, you can see the descriptions I provide for each level of those. But then you can also see I wanted to, this is something I added on later, right? Because I used to just do engagement and quality of writing, right? And then I got myself into that kind of quagmire of, well, this student didn't turn it in on time, or this student's only doing 200 words when they're supposed to be doing a minimum of 300 words. And instead of penalizing them for that, I just created some extra criteria in the rubric, right? But I didn't want those to be as heavily weighted, right? These first two criteria are worth up to 4 points each, right? These last two criteria, while worth something, aren't worth quite as much. So they're only worth 1 point each, right? So I've adjusted the weight. And so that's a nice thing you're able to do now with Brightspace's rubrics, is have different point distributions for different criteria. And then just to kind of wrap up my examples before I hand things over here, I'll show you one more complex one. And this is the one I use for their learning portfolio. And again, you can see here I've got several criteria at the 4-point level, right, with using that proficiency scale, right, proficient, emergent, developing, unacceptable, right, and descriptions of each of those, right. And then a slightly less point distribution for creativity and timeliness, right, and then even less point distribution for this kind of additional piece of the career worksheet that they need to do as a part of this as well. That's something I wanted them to pay attention to, but it's not something I wanted to give them a ton of points for, right? And so I kind of decreased its value there as well. But this is a really nice way of doing this. I don't think you could do this in Blackboard, correct me if I'm wrong, Janice, but this is something nice you can do in Brightspace that I find really useful is doing these different criterion groups. And then my only advice before I hand it over is, if you're going to use these, right, make sure you take the time to provide the details of these. I know sometimes it's tempting just to set them up, but then not provide any details about it. But if you want to use these as tools to help students with feedback, as I was talking about in that video, if you want to use these as tools to make your assignments more transparent, you've got to give students that information as to what each of these things means, right? Because they're not going to know what a proficient cover letter looks like without you telling them what a proficient cover letter looks like. Okay, so that's just a few examples that I wanted to present to you before I, like I said, hand it over to Carrie, who's going to show you then how you would actually use a rubric to grade in Brightspace.
Jay, did you also want to show how it looks like to the student, or do you want me to walk through that with them on the assignment?
Why don't you walk them through it, if you don't mind?
Okay. Yeah. So I get set. I don't know if there's any questions that anyone wanted to, or if anyone has asked any questions, rather. But
I actually do see one.
Yeah, Jay is just going to say there's a question in the chat there.
Yeah, Rachel. No, it's for the different distributions. You're doing it. It's one rubric, but you're able to create. I believe they're called criteria groups, right? And we'll see that once we get into the creation process. And so you create a group, and then that group has the same, grade distribute. Everything in that group has the same point distribution, but then in another group, you can have a different point distribution.
All right, so I'm going to go over to our sandbox, or I guess my sandbox, where I created an assignment and have already linked an existing rubric that I put together specifically for today. But I did want to sort of show, if we get into, I believe, well, let me go back here. If I go back to activities, assignments. Try to just open it up so you can see what it looked like for the student in their submission process. But click on the submission here. For some reason, it's not really, I can't get back to that. So I might have Janice help me with that in just a little bit. And sort of walk through, all right, so how do we use this now? So I've got a submission that was put together by one of my students. You can see that I've made some annotations on it already. So they can come in and start looking at it. And I've created a really simple rubric. And so when you come into the grading page, you're going to see the rubric's already been selected here. And so what I can do then is just go ahead and click on the assessment there. And did that pop up for you guys as well? Okay, so let me share a little bit differently here then. We will just share the desktop then. There we go. All right, so now you guys should be able to see that, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, so what I can do then is I've created just a very simple, 2 criteria in here. It's worth 100 points, and then you can open this up so you can sort of see what the overall score will mean. But the click process is really simple here, right? And so when a student can see when they actually come through and they're looking at the assignment, they'll be able to see the rubric for them. It'll present the different criteria. And in this case, it was just 2 simple ones: the strategy that the student presented, and then the diagnostics that they used in order to be able to go through the problem-solving process. And then it gives them, again, like Jay said, very specific sort of details as to what it is that they will be graded and how they'll be graded there. And then it's just a click process. And so in this case, let's say that the student was, above average in one, and then they were, average on the other. What that does then is it will populate then the grade here. And then I, of course, have the ability to come in. And since this is a 10-point scale here, I can come in and sort of walk through and change as far as, I thought that this was worth, it was only average, but it was worth 36 points, and so I'll come in here and I can make that change there with the pop-up there. And then it's going to give them some, pre-selected feedback here as far as the overall score is concerned. And then I can just go ahead and click on close. It'll populate the 7.6 here out of 10. And the reason it's 7.6 is because I actually forgot to change this as a 10-point on a 100-point scale. And then it gives them the student preview there of 76. And then if there's any additional feedback that I want to be able to provide, I can do so here as well. Right. And so the process for being able to grade, and one of the reasons why this is, especially for case presentations for me, you can populate this with as much as you want, and then be able to come in if you want to make changes again. You can come back and be able to say, what, I've gone through everybody else and I want to change this back. I thought this was actually exceptional. And so yeah, same thing over here. I now that I've read everybody else's work, and I can come in and I can make the change here as well and say, what, this is going to override that grade. This is actually an 83 now, or I guess this would be a 90 something now. And I can come in and say, give that person 94. The override will be there. It changes the overall score, and then the pre sort of selected information here as far as the feedback is concerned. And then Janice will sort of walk through the process of being able to fill in that initial feedback. And then you can just click on close and it'll make the update here as far as the the case is concerned, or as far as the grading is concerned. And again, the annotation process would be the same as it would be with anything else that we're grading. But it is really, really simple to go through and be able to grade. And then you can just come back and click on publish, and it will hopefully, if we go to the grade book here, it'll come back and you'll see that it has published the 9.4 out of 10, which is the 94 for that one particular student. And so now I've got, the grading process for that individual done. And so it really is as simple as, and again, the more I guess detailed and the more criterion that you have, you can make this as simple or as complicated as you'd like with the rubrics. And so, but the grading process is the same. It really is a click process that you use in order to populate it. Then you can save it and then be able to have some feedback back and available for the student to be able to use and see. So are there, let me kind of stop the share here real quick. We'll come back to, are there questions or any concerns with that demo? I was going to see if I could log in as my demo student. So if there's questions and stuff, I might actually come back and be able to show you what the student sees if I can find Janice's initial email.
I can pull, Carrie, I can pull my student view up real quickly.
Okay.
And there's no questions yet in the chat, Carrie.
Awesome.
But you'll notice that the student view is very much similar to our view, right? So this is what a student would see, right? If the student came to the grade book or the assignments page and said, oh, I got some feedback, right? They can see their score there, 7 out of 10, right? And then I always remind my students, make sure you're taking a look at the feedback that you get provided, right? And here's what they see instead. This overall feedback, right, is what I wrote, right, when you saw Carrie doing the typing in the grading section, right? But they see the full rubric breakdown. They see exactly where you selected that they go. And then you see that individual criterion feedback also that Carrie was talking about, right, which says, here's where you're doing well, or here's what you need to think about for the quality of your writing, right? And then they see that overall score down at the bottom as well. I don't usually do a whole lot with the overall score. I saw that Carrie does do quite a bit with it. I usually focus more on at the criteria level instead of worrying too much about that overall score.
And again, I think that, and just because mine was on 100, out of 100 points, there's going to be a little bit of a difference there. But if you're going on a scale of 10 or a scale of 5, you're not necessarily worried so much about the outcome on that full grade. I do, Jay, if you want to show, I can actually. Oh,
before you go away from that, Jay, I want to point one thing out. Yeah, just because one thing I am very aware of this semester is that there's a lot being asked of us as faculty members, and a lot of it's a little overwhelming. So I want to focus on some things that make this really efficient, because you can look at this and think, oh my gosh, this is another thing I have to set up and this would be overwhelming. But look at his feedback down there. This is a good start. Don't focus on just the facts or obvious ideas. So this is something that Jay actually embedded when he created his rubric, so that when he clicked that little box that's blue up there above it, that automatically gives that feedback, which if you do that once, then you can reuse that if they're getting that feedback and you're not having to retype it. So I just want to know that we are aware of how overwhelming this semester is. And so I wanted to emphasize that this also can be a time saver once you do it once, right? Once you do it once.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the only thing I typed for this student was this, 2 or 3 sentences. And I've already told the students that, I'm doing that for the first one. Maybe I'll do it in a couple more weeks as well, but I'm not going to do that for every single one. I've got 73 students in these 2 classes, right? And I'm doing these each week. And so most of the feedback they're getting from me is pre-programmed, but it still it's still tweaked to them because the rubric breaks it down for them.
And we do have a question in the chat. Moral, I think Janice is going to get to this question for you, but Moral asks, where do you put the rubric in the assignment tool? So that's actually starting to, how do you create these in Brightspace? And I think Janice is going to get to that part.
Yeah, and just really quickly, let me kind of come through and just show. So this is the actual assignment. So this is what the student's going to see on their end when they go through and actually go through the submission process. And so you can see that the criterion is laid out, the the different anchors that are there, so they can kind of come through and see, how am I going to be graded? What's the expectation? Some of the language there can differentiate between what's above average and what's above average and what's exceptional. And then of course they're understanding what the score is going to look like and how that's going to come back and be reflected as far as the point value and such. And so again, it does give them an opportunity to sort of see, and again, this is the whole idea behind the process, is for them to understand how it is that their level of work is going to be differentiated from everybody else's. So.
But I think with that, we can bring things over to to Janice.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. All right, and I think you should be able to see my web browser window now, correct?
Yep.
All right, and so I thought I would start off here with this concert report rubric. A few semesters ago, I worked with Sister Juliana, who wanted to move from the students having to submit paper copies of concert reports. They had to do 5, each student 5 for the semester, times 60 students, which was a lot. So she wanted to be able to move to grading these through Brightspace. And so in looking at the instructions that she provided for the students in terms of how they were going to earn the total 20 points for that concert report, she didn't want to have these criteria be weighted the same because the content and the information she felt was had a heavy, more weight than, say, timeliness or them providing a ticket or program. So with this, we were able to put this into Brightspace, and I'll show you how this looks. As Jay mentioned, to get to the rubrics, you can go to Course Admin and then Rubrics. When you're in the Rubrics tool and you want to create a new rubric, of course, you would click the blue new rubric button. I am not going to do that. I'm going to actually look at this rubric that's already created. And so I'll go here and choose Edit, and we'll talk about how this was done. And so there's a new rubric creation experience. And so if you get into the rubric tool and you don't see your rubric looking in this format here, it is probably because you're using the old experience. There's an arrow up at the top toward the top right of the page. If you click on that, there's an option to be able to turn the rubric creation experience on. So like I said, if you get into it and you don't see it in this format, then that's what you're going to need to do. So anywhere there's an asterisk, that means that that is a required field. So of course we have to give the rubric a name. Up here in the right-hand corner is where you can identify what the status of the rubric is. And right now this is a draft because we're working on it. When you're ready to associate the rubric with something, then it would have to be in a published state. You identify the type of rubric here from this pull down, and this is an analytic rubric, but your choices would be analytic or holistic. And here I have chosen custom points because the point values for each of the criteria are different. If each one was weighted the same, then I could just go ahead and choose points as the scoring method. And then this is a button here where you can actually just click on it and quickly reverse your level order. So we have our levels here. There are 3 levels. And then our criteria along the right side. If you want to add a new level, you can using the plus, either going to add it before or add it after. And so here, all I have to do is just click in these fields to type in the information that I want. So I've got the 3 levels here. And then for timeliness, if you recall from the rubric, the timeliness was going to be worth just 2 points. So she decided that if they met the expectation, they submitted it on time, it'd be worth 2 points. If it wasn't submitted on time, she'd still give them a point. And we had to indicate no report was submitted, so there's a 0 here. When you're setting up these levels and criteria, this is the description for the level in this box. So for timeliness, if you meet the expectation, then this is a description of what that is. And if you include something in the initial feedback box, this is what the initial feedback that every student would get if you're doing the point and click to select that item as what they're going to be graded on. It will automatically add in this initial feedback. And notice this changes based on the level and the criteria. So in addition to them knowing here what this level and criteria means, you get the opportunity to give them some additional information. And so likewise, these other levels and criteria were created this way. And then we have our content and information. If I needed to add another criteria, I could click on this blue add criteria button here. I'm going to skip over this add criteria group for a moment.
And Janice, wait, I'm just going to interject real quick. Jay has put in the chat a useful resource for labeling the levels in your rubric. So if you guys want to grab that link, that could be useful as well.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so this confirms that the levels and criteria that I have in here will total a maximum of 20 points if the student gets everything. And then you have to, with this analytic rubric, you have to provide an overall score. So here I'm indicating that there are 3 levels for this. If you meet the expectations, basically it's going to be 18 points or above, so 90% of the total points. And then needs improvements, anywhere between 11 and 17 points. Their overall score would reflect that they need improvement. And then 10 or less will show up as inadequate. At the very bottom, you have an options. And so you can always go here, because here is the rubric visibility. So by default, the rubric is going to be visible to students. There may be a situation where you want to hide the rubric from students, but if you're trying to be transparent, the student should probably see the rubric, but there is an option that you can hide that rubric from students. You can also hide it until the feedback is published. So the students wouldn't see this rubric until after you published feedback for that assignment. You can also hide the scores. You have the opportunity to add a description. And so this is helpful as you're creating various rubrics, and you're, semester after semester can help you with identifying what the specific rubric is doing. We also have some advanced availability options here. This one says competencies, and anywhere in Brightspace where you see the reference to competencies, we actually do not have that module in our Brightspace system. It would be nice, but we actually don't have it. So having it checked or unchecked, it's not going to have any effect because we don't have that competency module. We do have ePortfolio, however, most folks have moved away from that, and that could be a whole another discussion about it, but ePortfolio is there. All right, so I skipped over add criteria group, but I want to point out, you might have noticed in some of Jay's rubrics where he was talking about his rubrics were more complex, so maybe he started out with these levels and criterias, but maybe I need another group where I don't need these 3 levels. Maybe I need 4 or I need 2. So I can just click this button here to add a criteria group. And then it gives me the opportunity to indicate what that is. So maybe it would be, I don't know, or whatever. And so let's say I needed another level. And then I can indicate how many points this is. So let's say I want this to be 10 points, 8 is fine. So this, the maximum number of points that they can get for this particular level and criteria is 10. Notice my total points here for this rubric has now changed. It's added another 10 points to the original 20 that I had. But notice what happened. My overall score did not change. The points for my overall score did not change. So when you're setting up your rubric, you definitely want to, your analytic rubric, you definitely want to look and make sure that the overall score is reflective. So since this is now a total of 30 points, maybe meets expectations would be 27 points or higher, needs improvement, who knows? And then inadequate would be 0. What's also happening here with the new rubric creation experience, notice there is no save button. So as I am entering information, the system is automatically saving it. So I will click close. And all of those changes that I made are in that rubric. Now, there was a question about how do you attach this rubric to, for example, an assignment submission folder or anywhere else where there's an assessment. You're going to find that. So for Sister Juliana, for example, for her assignments, she had 5 assignment submission folders. And if I go in and I edit this assignment so that I can see what's going on, now this is the new assignment creation experience. And so if you've got that turned on, you're going to see the assignment submission set up in this way. If not, once again, there's an arrow up in the upper right. If you turn that, click on that arrow, you can actually turn this experience on or off, your choice. But here under evaluation and feedback is where you would actually add in the rubric. And so the concert report rubric is not the one that I was just messing with. This is the original one, and it is worth 20 points. So as Carrie mentioned, when you're grading, I'm just going to cancel this. When you are grading, so I have one new submission here. I can actually click on this to go directly to that new submission, but I am actually going to just view all of the submissions that are here. So here from this view, I can see that feedback to this particular student was already published and when. And then this gives me an acknowledgement that the student actually read that feedback. And so for what Sister Juliana was attempting to do, the student needed to provide a copy of the ticket or program in addition to their report. And so this particular student submitted it as 3 separate files. In this case here, this is the one that is unread. It's telling me that I need to evaluate this. So if I click on this document, it should open in this window eventually, anytime now. All right, and so you can review what the student submitted. Notice there's a ticket. And then over here to grade it, you would click on the link to see the rubric, and then you would do the click and score and return that information here. I also wanted to point out a couple of other rubrics. So I'm going to go back to the rubrics tool. All right. And so if you're trying to set up a rubric where you want to use a point range, Blackboard had that option and Brightspace does not. So what you could do is set up an analytic rubric based on points. And if I take a look at this one, what I've done is in the levels, so all three of these are worth 10 points. But in the levels here, I'm indicating that for excellent, you might get 9 to 10 points. For good, you'd get 7 to 8. Fair, 5 to 6. And so when you're grading, you can actually change the points. So when you select that, if the student, you decided that for their delivery it was good, but you want to give them the 7 points instead of 8, you can actually edit that and change those points there. So this particular rubric, when viewed, would look something like this. Excellent, 9 to 10, and so on and so forth. All right. I'll close this one and just point out, I have another rubric here, this oral report one, which is actually a holistic rubric. And just real quickly, this one is based on percentages, but as Jay mentioned, you're only able to provide like some overall kind of feedback and not very many details about it. So for this oral report rubric that I have here, excellent, I'm saying, okay, that's going to be 100%. So you get all of the points. Very good, 85. But notice I have a whole bunch of information here describing what that particular level is.
Hey, and Jess, we have a I know that you would just want to show the holistic rubrics. We had a question about rubrics in general. But we'll ask, when you're grading the assignment, do you see the rubric at the same time, or do you need to go to a different rubric to see a different window to see the rubric? So I wonder if you want to go back to that where you can show the loaded assignment again and then where the rubric is.
Okay, the rubric will actually pop up in another window. I've shared my web browser, so that window, when it pops up, you're not actually going to see it in this Zoom session. But if Carrie or Jay can show that, I'll stop my screen sharing, or stop the sharing for me. Here we go.
Well, Jay's getting that set up. It's that the view you can see, so because when I use rubrics for my reading guides all the time, and you can see the students writing, and then it pops up the rubric over here, and I just click on it, as I'm going back and forth. But it's an automatic thing, Maurel. It's not, you don't have to do anything different. You click on the rubric and it pops it up as somebody's about to show you.
Jay?
Gary, you got one? Or give me 1 second, I can do one.
Turn myself back on here.
Yeah, do you want to, if you got it, Jay, or I'm happy to do, I can log in. Let me know if you need me to log in. Well, we're doing this, getting this pulled up.
I'm good.
Okay, well, while he's doing that, are there any other questions that you want to put in the chat or want to ask? Or I'm just filling this time while we're waiting on Jay.
No pressure or anything like that.
Yeah, no pressure.
So, I thought, well, I don't know if I didn't do too good of a job of showing that. Yeah, you can see both of the screens at the same time, right? That was the initial question.
Yeah, you can see it. I think we missed it. We've got a question here from Stacy about, do you have to associate a rubric with a created assignment in Brightspace. And if you're going to use the rubric, you do associate it with that assignment. That way, what Jay's about to show you, it pulls up on the same page. So when you go to assignments and you see all the submissions, that way the rubric is associated right there and you can see it. So you do associate it. And we'll get to the other questions in one moment.
You got it, Carrie?
Thank you. I was thinking about that, the participation one that Jay had put up.
Mm-hmm.
So like at the end of the semester, if I just want to be transparent and say, here's where I gave you your grade for participation, but there's no assignment that's participation, do I have to just create one and have them submit something? Or?
Well, you can associate a rubric with just a grade book item. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I could do that.
And not
okay,
necessarily an assignment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So on here, yes, if I just go ahead and click on it, it will populate another window for me. And so I can have, as I'm going through, I believe that was the initial question, right? Was
yes.
being able, yeah. So you can jump back and forth. Now mine, the way that my screen's sort of set up, it's not large enough to do both, but yes, I can have it open here and then be able to pop back and forth between the two, but it opens as a separate browser, which makes it so much easier.
Yeah, it really does. So do you see more else? What he did is he went to the submissions folders, and then he went to one of the student submissions. So that's what you're seeing there with the writing. That's actual student writing. And then when he clicked on that rubric right there on the right-hand side, you can see it down the bottom, it pops up the rubric. So you can actually have the writing right there in front of you as you're using the rubric. Is that
okay? Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a question about the association also?
We got it. We got that one answered while you were doing that.
I was going to say. Okay.
And then here's another question, which is, can you use the same rubric between all of your courses? So Janice, I wonder if you want to, or Jay, or any of y'all, if you want to comment on how you can copy, and then once you've got a rubric created, how you can put that in different courses.
Yes, you can. You can copy components between courses, or you can copy an entire course. So let's say it was a fall 19 course, you had rubrics in it, you can copy it into fall 2020. I'll put a link in the chat for the blog post that talks about how to copy components. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, it's very easy. I do it with like the engagement stuff. I have the same rubric I use for all my classes, and so it's very easy just to kind of copy it from one to another. I will also say, just while Janice is I think pulling that up, just kind of partially make a plug for some of our upcoming workshops with this Lex Advanced series, which is some of them are going to talk about the automation functions within Brightspace, whether it's intelligent agents or release conditions or even the badges. One of the cool things you can do by using those and rubrics is, you can, release a badge or release a condition or have an action take place when a student not only gets a certain score on something, but if you're using a rubric, you can have one of those actions take place just based on they're getting one specific score within one criteria of a rubric. Right. So, I mean, I used to have my freshman writing classes. If I had students who were getting low scores on the quality of their writing, then they would get an email sent to them, and, telling them they needed to go to the writing center. Right. And so again, it was that automated process, but it was connected specifically to the rubric. But again, it wasn't their score, their overall score on the paper. It was because they were getting a low rating just on the quality of their writing.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, for pointing that out, because that is a nice preview. And then Janice put the link to the blog post, which is very clear about how to copy components. So once you create your rubrics in one course, you can copy them to other courses. Easy. And then Terry Lynn asked, her challenge with rubrics are equating criterion points with the criteria. So any suggestions there? So Terry Lynn, I wonder if you'd be willing, or Dr. Jenkins, I wonder if you'd be willing to unmute yourself and give us a little bit more detail about what you're asking there.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. When I'm grading, when I start grading using the rubric, when the rubric pops up and I'm grading students' papers or discussions, because I use the rubrics for discussions and, whatever, I've just learned to just use rubrics because it's more transparent. But when I began to grade based on criteria, I have, place there to grade the rubric. I'm like, now this is not really working. This doesn't equate with these points. This doesn't equate with the student has done. So I'm always, going back thinking now maybe I just didn't do a good job or I didn't know exactly what I wanted to grade here or something. So I'm just trying to see how you can do it backwards, like with the backwards design for grade, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it may, because I think it's a problem I have had with rubrics, which is I would kind of give these points to like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
Exactly.
say for something, and then I would realize that a student was maybe ultimately ending up with what was like maybe like a 40% on an assignment, when they really should have been getting more, right? I didn't mean to give them that bad of a grade, right? Even though they were having some trouble, I didn't mean to fail them on the assignment. And so I have started kind of spending time trying to figure out, okay, if a student gets all the top marks, obviously it's going to come out to 100%. If that student gets all like the second level marks, then I probably want that to come out to maybe about a B, somewhere in the B range of percentages, right? And so whenever I'm creating a new rubric, I kind of tally those up to make sure that if they get straight down the column, whichever one it is, it kind of lines up with A, B, C, D kind of structure, or ACF, depending on how many levels I want to put in there. I don't know if that addresses your question. If that's what you're talking about with
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like usually the student gets way less than what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, and it's probably because I just didn't do a good rubric of, and students like to see it line by line. For example, if you have 5 points in one of those criteria, they want to know exactly what that 5 points equate. And I'm trying to work it. And then when you get to the maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or whatever, so 4 points may be missing like one thing there, but it doesn't always work out for me. And I'm just kind of figuring out how to do rubrics better where I am really transparent and students really understand the grade, how they were graded on this particular measure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
they always get a lower grade, and I'm trying to figure out. Now, I know this is not what this rubric. I didn't intend for this rubric to,
right,
to fail half of my class. I'm trying to make it so they know exactly what I'm expecting, unless I, with the backwards design, like what the students really need to learn. Here's what I want them to know by the end of this lesson, but it's not always good. And I just started really using rubrics a lot last semester. So, I had these holistic ones where I'll say you need to have this, 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 and this. But what is it in this, this, and this that students really need to be able to do? Kind of like unpacking the rubric, so to speak, unpacking the holistic thing for them, so to speak. So I don't know. I'm working on it though. I'm trying to get better at making rubrics and rubrics that really work for me.
Yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
I would encourage you to do that. Take a look and kind of tally up the points just for like one specific column. If a student got straight down this, what would like the percentage out of 100 be for that grade, right? So because I've started doing rubrics where it's like 5 points for top marks, right? But then the second column is might be like 4.3 points, which kind of annoys the students because they get these weird scores. But what I explain to them is if I round it out so that it looks nice and balanced, it's actually to your detriment because you're getting a worse score in the long run, right? So I've done the calculations to figure out that if a student gets all the way down the second column, they should be getting what's an 85%, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly it. Terry Lynn, is just play with, and it takes sometimes a couple semesters to get your rubrics balanced like you like. I've been teaching research methods forever, and I tweaked my rubrics just recently because I thought, this one could have been this way, and it's just kind of tweaking them and get them where it represents you. I know that there are people who need to go to the 1 o'clock class, so I just want to say, I know Janice wants to say something, but I want to say a formal thank you to Jay and Carrie and Janice before people get off. If you do need to go. But Janice, you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to mention about the rubric statistics, and I'm just wondering if any of you who are using rubrics right now, have you looked at these statistics and then made changes based on that? I don't have an actual class, so I can't really show that. And I had a problem, so I'm just wondering if others are going to have this as well. So if you were running the rubric stats, would you go to the rubrics tool and run it from there? Or how are you doing it?
Jay, you want to show, because Stephanie asked the same thing. How can we do that? I didn't know that existed. So let's, if you want to show their
Let me take a look.
rubric stats.
I have not used them a whole lot, mostly because in general my classes are pretty small, and so that sort of analysis isn't all that,
And actually, Janice, could you instead just show us where it is? And I'm doing this, people, because we've had a couple workshops where we've shown things we weren't planning on showing, and then it becomes a privacy issue for students because this is being recorded. So I don't want Jay to show all his students' grades. So we can just show you where it is, and then when you go there, you can see what stats are there and what you can look at in yours. Or you can schedule a one-to-one with us, and we'll happy to show you our student stuff when we're not being recorded, if you don't mind. But do show Stephanie where it is, please.
Yeah. Thank you.
Whoa, I couldn't figure out how to unmute. All right. You should be able to see my screen. So when you're in the rubrics tool, one of the options, so this one here is linked to in my sandbox course. One of the options is view statistics. Here I am supposed to be able to see stats about this. I graded actually one assignment, but I don't see any rubric stats here. So I was just wondering, those of you who are using rubrics, if you see any information here. What's happening to me is if I go here to assignments, and here where I've graded something with the rubric, if I get in to this, let's say I'm trying to evaluate this, you can also get to the stats from here. So over in the evaluation and feedback, that's what this little icon here is for. If I click on this, it tells me that there's one assessment in there and then what happened, and I can actually get criteria. You can't see the window that's being popped up, but I can get
yeah, we can see it.
Oh, you could?
I can show a little example though of the rubric stats.
Oh, good. Let me stop sharing. Yeah, great. You can show something other than one.
It's only from one assignment so far, but so it's not going to be real, thorough with it. But so this is the statistics. You should be seeing rubric statistics for learning reflection rubric version 3. Right, and again, under activities tab, I don't get anything, so we may want to kind of look into that. But under competency activities, right, here's all my assignments, and so I think this is kind of going into a different way to go into what Janice was just showing you, right? And so I can see for learning reflection 1, right, it says I got 62 assessments, right? The average level was mastery, right? The average score was 9.5, 9.6 out of 10, right? And then if I click on the little icon for actions, I'm going to get that breakdown, which says 89% of my students I rated as at mastery level, right, for this. 10% were proficiency, and only 2% were at emerging. And I could then even go into criteria statistics and drill down. And again, this is where it can become really useful. Like somebody was saying, if you need to tweak your plans for coming classes and maybe realize that, well, students are really struggling with these, not because of how they're engaging, but just because they're not doing a good job of writing it, right? And maybe I just need to spend a little time reminding them of what good writing it this looks like, right? Or maybe they're just doing badly because they're all turning them in late, right? Like I said, I don't spend a whole lot of time doing those, just because most of the time my classes are under 20 or 30 students, and so I can see those trends just from doing the grading myself. I may find it a little more useful because, again, I've got this combined X-Core class now with 73 students in it. And so I'm not going to be able to kind of keep track of those trends just in my head as I'm grading these things. But maybe at midterm, I can go back and take a look and see what the overall analysis is, which could be pretty useful for me.
And we got a question from Morwell about the recordings for the workshops. So those go to our CAT YouTube channel, and it usually, Bart's been working on producing those, and so it's usually like maybe early or mid next week it will be up there. So keep checking the CAT YouTube channel, and I think Jay in his weekly emails, there's always a link about that, right? About the recordings.
With the most recent ones.
With the most recent ones. But Morel, I just cut and pasted the links from this chat and just sent them to you via email. So I got you back. And then Stephanie says, thanks. Yeah, this will be helpful in seeing where they go. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And Carrie had a 1 o'clock too, so he had to step out. But thank you all thanks, Jay and Janice. Let me do the clap. Oh, wait,
and I already awarded everybody their first Lex Advanced badge. So you should have gotten a little pop-up. Or next time you log into Brightspace, you will get a little message saying you've received that. So thank you all again for being here.
Thank you all for doing it. If you've got any other questions, let us know. If there's any other workshop ideas that you, or needs, like as you're going through this, if there's stuff that we can do for you, please know that Kat's here for you, and let us know what we can do, all right? Otherwise, I will see you next time. It's so good seeing you all. Bye.
Really quickly, what is the channel name for the YouTube channel? Sorry. Is it CAT+FD or is it?
Search on center. Do the full name.
Do the center. Okay. All right.
Don't search on CAT on YouTube.
Yeah. I don't know how to get there. Good. Yeah. Because I was going to ask about the mixed methodology workshop y'all did, and that's probably over there. That's why I haven't been able to.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Nice seeing you.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice seeing you, site colleagues. Miss you.
Quick question. I put it in chat, but
I'm sorry. Did I miss it?
Is there a workshop for improving rubric quality? Like the bright spacey click this to make it thing? Very helpful. Mm-hmm. Yes. I am still developing in the quality of my rubrics, and I would love to improve for both the students and my sanity. So I don't regrade everything 3 times, because the grades, like the other person shared, the grades are way lower than, and I'm like, is it me? Is it the group? Like, yeah.
I'm going to send
from something like that too. So I would attend.
Okay. Jay, because you did something like that back in the day where it's really just focused on rubrics and not, not the tech. But I can also get you all, I'm looking, there's a couple of really good, look, here's Booker. Here we go. Let's say hi now. Here we go. There's a couple of good websites from other teaching centers that I will point you to as well. And there's some kind of guidelines, practices about exactly what Jay was saying. Make sure that you have an idea of how much you want each thing to weigh, right? Because sometimes, think about it like in advanced research or in research methods, right? Sometimes they could get a really good grade and they didn't do APA style at all because we didn't weigh APA style enough. But sometimes APA style alone will get them too high a grade because they didn't do content well. Mm-hmm. So you've really got to, once you create a rubric for a class like that, which can save so much time, is you've got to just go through and pretend like it was somebody getting a B, and did they get a B? And then you might have to edit. So that's the real thing. What is your real objectives? You want those reflected, because that's what students are going to start to perform to when they see this is where the points are coming from. It doesn't matter what you say for your objectives for the assignment. They're going to perform to that criterion. So what are your real objectives? What do you really want to grade? And then what's the balance? So I'll send you all some links, but that would be we could do something like that for sure.
Yeah, we could. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I feel like I always struggle with the language pertaining to each section, and making sure, because when I've looked at like other examples, it'll be kind of like proficiency or math, like they'll use words that I'm not where I feel like me and my student don't always agree what that means.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You need to be transparent and clear with them. What does proficiency mean? And Jay and Jess can attest, I improved my rubrics this year by adding in some of those details and just said, sorry, let me put him down. Instead of just having excellent, good, average, I put in some of those details, and it made me change my rubric, because when I started putting in some of those details, I kind of thought like, oh, I don't know on some of these, so perhaps this shouldn't be such a strong part of their grade. So it's always a process, and it will change, especially in a class like research methods. It will change over time because you're going to start to value different parts, and then, yeah. Yep. Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Well, it was wonderful seeing everybody.
Yeah, miss you, psych women.
Can I talk to you a little bit?
Yes.
Hi, nice.
Terry Lynn, did you have a question for us?
Oh, I stayed on because I was in that same boat, just trying to make sure my rubrics are better. I'm just doing the best I could. Miss Lauren, would you please send me the link to how to I did my assignments. I know they made some changes to Brightspace. It looks really cute and everything, but for some reason my students can't see the link, and I can't seem to find the button to make sure they could see the link for their assignment. They could see it in the calendar and click on it, but there's no way for them to download. So can you just send me the link how I can, I mean, you know, how you send the blog of how to do the assignment or whatever, just so I can do it quickly.
So this is for an assignment. This is for an assignment submission folder?
Yes, the students can't, there's no link for them to submit, if that makes sense.
I'm wondering if we can stop this recording and maybe you can share your screen and we can take care of it right now.
Okay, then when it's, how about if I just make an appointment with you right quick and do it?
Or we can do it right here, unless you got to go.